Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, this morning's video I'm taking another deep look into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. Going to be answering the question, at least from my perspective, of why this edition is still so playable today. And today's focus will be on the Manual of the Planes, which is written by Jeff Grubb. So it's the first supplement written by Jeff Grubb. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch views so you can actually take a look at the physical copy. And then I'll switch again and go over to scrolling through the PDF and just hitting on some of the points that I think are most important. Excuse me. So here I have my physical copy of it. I've recently picked this up, and this was another good bargain that I picked up on eBay for under $30 or approximately $30, not including shipping and tax. But as you can see, it is it's still in excellent condition for a book that was produced in 1987, I believe. I will double check there. So Jeff Grubb signed it in 86, but this is 87. So it is all rights reserved 87. So 1987 to now. So what is that? 33 years. 33 years ago, this book was released. So it is in excellent condition. Like I said, you could still get it for, I'd say, between 30 and possibly $40 if you're kind of lucky. They do run a little bit higher. Recently, there's been a real boost in price on first edition materials, and that kind of tells me that the popularity of this edition is growing. Many more people just asking about it, looking to get into it. A lot more people actually buying the hard copies rather than the reprints that you can get on Drive-Thru RPG. But and in many cases, they're not all hardcover reprints or even softcover reprints. You can only get the PDFs from Drive-Thru RPG. Not in every case, but in most of the cases, the books only come in that format. So if you want to get your hands on the originals, they are available out there, even though they're starting to increase in cost to do that. So without further ado, I am going to jump over into the PDF. So here we have the PDF. Once again, the great artwork that is present throughout all of the TSR products. But here we have it, and the special thanks, and I want to focus on one of these because it is probably one of my favorite articles in Dragon Magazine of all time, and that was Ed Greenwood's definitive, as he puts, dissertation on the Nine Hells. I am going to link at the end of this video my video on that particular series of articles that were in the Dragon magazines, the Nine Hells, and because it was such a comprehensive and really important supplement to my own group's D&D playing, but also I think in the time that it was released, kind of right during the Satanic Panic, or certainly within the midst of it. Maybe not at the very beginning of it, and certainly not near the end. It was somewhere in between, and it was really quite a brave thing to put out there at the time. So and I think it was meant to give credibility to including that content in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and just the Dungeons and Dragons gameplay, at the time. So I am going to focus certainly on that section as well, but like I said, I am going to link it in the closing portions of this video. So Jeff Grubb writes his forward, and basically he talks about his influences and why this was a fun project to write and important and so on. So I mean nothing of a great departure from what other forwards were. We then go right into the table of contents, and I want to focus a little bit on the layout that they use for each. And so here they have the organization of the book is divided into an overview, the traveling to the plane. So each section gives an overview of what that plane is. And the planes are the prime material planes, the ethereal planes, the inner planes, the astral planes, and the outer planes. And so we're going to go through at least an example of each of those so that you can get an idea of what this book is about. And the organization of the book follows with an overview, traveling to the plane. So how does the character party actually get there? Established spells and their variations, magic items and the effects that plane has on magic items that you might already have, or perhaps there are magic items that are specific to that particular plane and can only be found there. Spell-like abilities that are common amongst the denizens of these various planes. Psionic abilities. And then freestanding artifacts such as gates. So these are all ways in which you might travel to those planes, all ways in which magic items and such might be affected while there. Then there's survival, and so each plane, has various aspects that will hinder, in most cases, hinder your survival there. And so, what are the basics that you need? You need air, you need food, you need water, and potentially shelter as well. What are the effects of the gravity? What is the impact on your sense of direction, your hearing, your vision? Movement usually operates under, unusual rules in the planes and such. Time also. Time is a constant in the known planes of existence, but time, or at least your sense of time, can certainly be altered on some of these various planes. And so that might have an effect, a very important effect on not only your characters, but also the adventure that they're participating in. We then go and we start to show where, how these transitional depiction of planes. So as you can see, how they're kind of set up, and you can see here is the prime material. All right, then the inner planes, and then the astral plane will then wrap into the outer planes as well. So there's just kind of a relationship in a visual way of seeing how these planes are aligned with one another and such. So almost like a three-dimensional view. We have other charts that show, how to travel to and from and such. So a schematic diagram of the planes. So whereas this is a three-dimensional, this is a schematic. We have the spell summary. So introduction to to evocation and evocation spells, channeling magic and such. So a whole section on that. Then we go to the ethereal plane. And as I said, they start with an overview, explains what the plane is like, how to reach that plane, what other planes border the ethereal plane, and then we get to the various aspects of it, survival within the plane. So let's take a look at the ethereal plane. Breathing in the ethereal plane, physical objects are converted into the ethereal equivalents. Metal to ethereal metal, flesh to ethereal flesh, stone to ethereal stone, etc. A living body can then breathe the ethereal air in a normal fashion. Since ethereal permeates the entire plane and all the substances within, a character cannot be smothered excuse me, by ethereal stone, nor drown in ethereal lake. The entire body can still be affected by gas attacks, such as stinking cloud and cloud kill. They are cast in the ethereal plane. If they are cast in the ethereal plane. So when your body is ethereal and everything, you cannot be smothered by stone. I would assume that you can't be killed by a fall either. Um, so I'd have to dig further into that to see how how that affects falling. So the effects of time for metabolic and other natural processes takes place 10 times slower in the prime, on the prime. For every 10 turns that pass on the ethereal plane, the effects are as if the single turn has passed for the character. So if your character resides on the ethereal plane for an extended period of time, back in the prime material plane, time is moving by 10 times faster. So it's kind of a time travel in the case that a player character decides that they would stay on the ethereal plane for 10 years, let's say. They will step back out onto the prime material plane that they're accustomed to, or where they came from 100 years later. They talk about movement. Let's see if they do talk about fall. Let's see. I'm not seeing falling, at least not right now. So, but anyway, we spent some time with the ethereal plane, and you kind of get the idea of some of the effects. So the inner planes, these are many of your elemental planes. So you have the elemental plane of fire, earth, air, water, positive energy, and negative energy, and your various effects of traveling to these inner planes as viewed from the earth and air poles. So on the northernmost pole, I'm assuming is the earth, and on the southernmost pole would be the air, and then everything is in between. Survival in the inner planes. With the exception of the plane of elemental air, normal breathing is impossible in the inner planes unless the traveler has some sort of extraordinary means of breathing. All right, so in most cases, traveling to any of these planes, you're going to need a great deal of preparation before you actually travel there. Here we have player characters, magic users and illusionists see magic in the inner planes. We have clerics and druids. They also have adjustments to their magic as well. And they deal with each of the character classes and how they might be affected in the inner planes. Then we go very specifically into the individual planes. So the elemental plane of air, plane of elemental fire, earth, water, para-elemental planes. Let's see what their overview is. So para-elemental planes are the minor planes that lie between the major elemental planes. The para-elemental planes are smoke, where air meets fire, magma, where fire meets earth, ooze, where earth meets water, ice, where water meets air. These planes are called minor for several reasons. They are harder to reach for prime material spellcasters. They are home to fewer great powers. They are less varied than major planes. They are also transition planes between the major elemental planes. So the positive and negative poles. I mean, clearly speaking, if you go to either of these, your survival is probably going to be very short if you don't go there properly prepared. The positive quasi planes, survival in the positive quasi planes. Each of the positive quasi planes possesses its own problems for survival. As a general rule, the limitations for the major elemental planes, the quasi planes, adjoins apply to the quasi planes. So lightning, radiance, minerals, steam, and so forth. Once again, traveling to planes is certainly a high level character endeavor, and a great deal of preparation would be required in order to survive. All right, let's. So the astral plane. I didn't focus too much. The astral plane is a plane that does get a lot of attention. I think there are many encounters that you might have where the creatures effectively live in both the prime material and the astral. Same thing with the ethereal. There are some creatures such as ghosts that exist in both. Whereas you can't really affect them on the prime material plane, you'd have to affect them on an astral level unless you have obviously magic weapons or such. And so that's another preparatory thing that you have to consider. So the astral plane consists of other dimensional nothingness, a barren expanse extending in all directions. Let me make this a little larger so I can read it a little better. The only breaks in this bleakness are small islands of matter broken off from the native dimension and occasional wide spinning columns of astral conduits, also called wormholes. Wormholes link the outer planes with each other and the prime material plane. The astral is a little more than the plane of transition, a means of moving between the inner and outer planes. It is also secondarily the home of extraplanar creatures. This plane has precious few native creatures and only power that makes this his home here from the legends of lore is Anubis of the Egyptian mythos. Okay. So combat in the astral plane. Conjurations and summoning within the astral plane. And so on. So there's, as I said, each plane has its own set of conditions, but they all have in common that same format where they talk about how do you get there, what are the survival aspects of it, who resides there, and how do you function there as well. So spell effects and such. So the outer planes, and here we're going to go into, you have Nirvana, you have Arcadia, you have the seven heavens, the twin paradise, Elysium, you have the happy hunting grounds, Olympus, Gladsheim, Limbo, Pandemonium, the abyss, Tartarus, Hades, Gehenna, the nine hells, Asheron, and the concordant opposition. And you can see each one is assigned with an alignment, basically, and then the number of layers found in each. And here you have the layout of the outer planes. And then in the very center is the concordant opposition. Kind of keeps everything in balance. How to reach the outer planes. Like I said, the same format. Survival in the outer planes. The atmospheres of the outer planes are generally breathable to most travelers from the prime material plane. Those that are greatly different are noted under the description thereof. So there's no common, other than that most can be survived traveling from the prime material to them, with just a few exceptions. Humans suitable for the outer planes. A subtable, I'm sorry. Human subtable for the outer planes. So that's for encounters. Once again, 130 pages. We're at page 80 now. So, as I said in my last video, 130 seems to be the standard for these supplements. I think virtually all are 130 or approximately 130. So here we have the now this of course is a bridge in hell. The River of Styx is a permanent conduit through the lower planes from the battlefields of Acheron through the nine hells, Gehenna, Hades, Tartarus, and the Abyss, and Pandemonium. It functions in much the same way as the Yggdrasil The method of transportation through these planes, contrary to speculation, the Styx does not extend into the astral plane, though portals do stand on the banks of the river, enabling the boatmen of the Fell River to reach the astral plane. Excuse me. And this, of course, is the one of the famous pictures by Jeff Easley that was used in Ed Greenwood's articles of the 9 Planes of Hell. And so we continue through the Twin Paradises. The Twin Paradises are the home of those spirits and powers that believe in the forces of good. They believe in the organization only when necessary or when it is the best method of dealing with a problem. The plane is unique among the outer planes in that the barrier between the two is large, encompassing, and upper regions of both layers are very transparent, so that the surface of one layer can be viewed from the other as a ghostly mirror reflected against the sky. That's pretty cool. Okay. So now you have the abyss, which is basically the home of the demonic entities that your characters might unfortunately encounter. On the So they're talking about the abyss and its conduits. Pezunia is the second layer. You can travel from there to, if I'm understanding this correctly, you can go to the 64th layer. The 65th layer is Loth's Web, and the 66th layer is Loth's Domain. 2 other layers of the abyss is continuing down this direction, and back to the prime material is this direction. And here is just another representation of this is Tartarus and its multiple layers. Hades, the daemons, led by Athraxis, rules Hades. So you have Mount Olympus here, to the prime, and Hades and its layers, to the prime and Olympus, to the prime and Gladstein. Yggdrasil is the tree in which they can travel. Mount Olympus is here. You have Pluton, you have Niflheim, Oinos, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Gehenna. So as you can see, there are just so many different planes, literally probably close to 1,000 different planes that you can have your player characters travel to. And each one is very very unique. So here, very well known now is Avernus. Uh, Avernus is the first level into the nine hells, and it is entrance from the Astral Plane. And this is a major campaign put out by 5e called Descent into Avernus. And we're coming fairly close to the end. And there we have it. The appendix one is the prime material planes. And creatures of the inner planes. And these just look like we're getting ready to do some, charts and graphs and mostly tables, random tables. Summary of creatures from the outer planes. Abilities and powers. Greater powers can perform the following abilities at will, and so you just have a description very, very similar to Legends and Lore or Deities and Demigods, where they kind of lay out all the various powers that they all have in common, and we get to the index. So let me switch views. So as you can see, it's a very dense 100 pages, a lot of information, a lot of adventuring that can take place here. And for the most part, I will be honest, 1987 was around the time that that my group kind of broke up and, going off to college or whatever. So I never got this book back in 1987 because it just wasn't something that we were doing very much of as a player group. We weren't traveling to other planes. Perhaps we did Avernus based on what we read in the Dragon magazine with the Nine Hells, but I really don't even recall that often. So we weren't very much into extraplanar travel in my particular group. And like I said, I had stopped playing tabletops around 1987 or so when my group broke up, and I made the transition over to computer gaming or console gaming for the most part until really these past 5 years marked my return to tabletop RPGs. But I'm certainly glad that I was able to pick these up and continue continue delving into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. We're coming close to the end of this series, so I only have 2 more books to go. We have Greyhawk, which is the setting that we played our entire 10-year span of time for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So so I'm really looking forward to that book as well, which once again I did not own back then, but we had the box set of Greyhawk, and we were utilizing that for all of our adventuring. And then the last one will be Dragonlance. So once again, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments to leave, please feel free to leave your comments. I try to get back to any of the questions that you have in a fairly short time. If you have any suggestions for material you'd like me to go back over into a little bit more detail, I'll certainly take those suggestions and, given the opportunity, I'll go back and cover some things that I might have missed. Excuse me, it's the season. I'm starting to cough a lot lately. So anyway, and once again, I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. I am running a regular scheduled every Friday afternoon AD&D campaign, which I just started. I'm also playing in an AD&D First Edition campaign every Sunday afternoon, and I'll give you updates on how those things are going. So, certainly with my own game that I'm running on Fridays, I'll post a regular update on that. But this game system is still very playable today, and I think that it is growing in popularity. Many more people looking to at least see how it works, and I'll be honest with you, I've had both experiences. I've had people come into the older versions of Dungeons and Dragons and say, "Wow, this is really much more simple than what I've been doing, and I'm really liking this." And then I've had a few others that have come in and said, "You know what, this is just not my taste," and they depart the campaign and go back to 5e or wherever else they happen to be playing. But I think for the most part, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition is growing in popularity, and it's certainly getting harder to get your hands on this stuff for a reasonable price. But it's out there in PDF as well if you do want to really experience the real beginning of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the much more complex game of Dungeons and Dragons beyond what D&D, the old D&D, had accomplished. So much more in depth, a little bit crunchier, but still, I think in many ways, much more simple way of playing it. You have less to think about with your characters. Without having all of these, copious, background skills and all other kinds of things coming into play and stackable abilities and such. This is much more straightforward, and I think you would enjoy it if you gave it a try. So, you all have a great afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Have a great day.